What we are seeing heading into this matchup is something rare, something that has boxing fans buzzing with equal parts excitement and skepticism. Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned professional fighter, has carved a path that no one anticipated. From viral knockouts over fellow celebrities and MMA fighters to earning the respect of some boxing insiders, Paul has transformed from a social media personality into a fighter that some opponents cannot afford to overlook. He is brash, confident, and unafraid, and that mentality has carried him through every challenge in the ring so far. But now, stepping up against Gervonta "Tank" Davis, the stakes have never been higher. This is not a bout against a fellow influencer or an MMA athlete. This is a confrontation with a legitimate, world-class professional boxer with multiple world titles and elite-level skill. Davis represents the pinnacle of modern boxing talent in the lightweight and super featherweight divisions. He is fast, explosive, and dangerous in every range. His power is legendary. He possesses the kind of one-punch knockout ability that can end a fight in an instant. He fights with a unique combination of aggression and precision, capable of overwhelming opponents with speed, timing, and angles that are extremely difficult to defend against. Davis is a switch hitter who can adapt mid-fight, and his body punching and head movement create openings that most fighters at his level cannot exploit without risking serious damage. Boxing analysts and former fighters have already weighed in on this matchup, and the opinions are divided but intensely passionate. Some argue that Jake Paul's size, reach, and unpredictability could allow him to test Davis in ways traditional fighters do not. Others point out that Paul's competition has been limited to non-boxing professionals or mid-level fighters, and that Davis's elite boxing IQ, power, and experience present a challenge that Paul may not be prepared for. Paul himself has been vocal, projecting confidence and self-belief. He frequently emphasizes his undefeated record in professional boxing, his improvement with every fight, and his willingness to take risks against high-caliber opponents. He positions himself as the underdog with the ability to shock the world, citing his reach, youth, and training improvements. Jake Paul's team has carefully mapped out a strategy for him to approach Davis, focusing on controlling distance, utilizing his left jab, and trying to avoid the power shots that define Davis's career. Analysts note that Paul has shown an ability to learn from mistakes and adjust, but they also caution that he has never faced someone with Davis's speed, combination punching, and defensive skills. Gervonta Davis, meanwhile, exudes calm confidence. He has faced elite opposition before and has repeatedly demonstrated that he is one of the most dangerous young fighters in the world. His knockout ratio is staggering, with many opponents never seeing his power before it lands. Davis has been trained to exploit weaknesses immediately, and his ability to read opponents in real time makes him extremely hard to surprise. Commentators frequently highlight that Davis's skill set is built on precision, timing, and devastating efficiency. He doesn't need a long accumulation of hits to control a fight. Veterans like Shane Mosley and Roy Jones Jr. have provided insight into how they view this matchup. Mosley has noted that while Jake Paul is brave and has shown improvement, there is a significant gap between him and elite pros like Davis. He points out that Davis's reflexes, timing, and ability to handle power make him extremely dangerous, even for a larger or longer opponent. Mosley emphasizes that one lapse in defense could be catastrophic, as Davis has finished fights in the first rounds with stunning efficiency. Jones Jr. echoes that sentiment, noting that Paul's movement and size are advantages, but they are not enough to compensate for Davis's refined technique and knockout ability. Analysts also debate stylistic matchups. Jake Paul tends to rely on reach and calculated pressure, but he has shown vulnerability to fast, powerful, and aggressive opponents who can cut off the ring and force exchanges. Gervonta Davis excels in close range, thriving in compact spaces where he can unleash combinations and body shots that break opponents down. The question becomes whether Paul can control distance long enough to mitigate Davis's explosive entries and punishing inside work. Analysts argue that if Paul keeps the fight at long range and uses his reach effectively, he may survive the early rounds, but sustaining that approach over 12 rounds against a killer like Davis is a different challenge altogether. From a legacy standpoint, this fight is massive for both fighters, but for very different reasons. For Jake Paul, a win over Davis would catapult him into the realm of mainstream boxing legitimacy, transcending his YouTube fame and solidifying him as a crossover star capable of competing with real-world champions. For Gervonta Davis, a victory against Paul is almost expected. Anything less would tarnish his aura of invincibility and raise questions about his performance against unconventional opponents. Analysts emphasize that for Davis, this fight is about discipline and proving dominance, whereas for Paul, it's about making history, shocking the world, and validating his entire boxing journey. Boxing insiders note that mental preparation will be critical. Jake Paul thrives on hype, crowd energy, and media attention, using it as fuel. However, Davis has faced high-pressure fights before, performing at his peak in hostile arenas and televised events. Observers argue that while Paul has embraced the psychological aspects of promotion, Davis's composure under pressure is a key advantage. The mental and tactical facets of the fight will likely determine whether Paul's boldness pays off or whether Davis's experience and ring IQ dictate the outcome. The potential fight dynamics are fascinating. Analysts predict that early rounds may favor Paul if he can maintain distance and avoid close-range exchanges. He may rely on jabs, lateral movement, and feints to frustrate Davis. However, once Davis closes the gap, his explosive combinations and accurate timing could force Paul into dangerous positions. Davis has a tendency to capitalize immediately on defensive errors, and experts emphasize that Jake Paul has never faced this level of anticipation and speed. Every analyst reviewing the matchup notes that one miscalculation or delayed reaction could swing momentum decisively in Davis's favor. Canelo Alvarez's remarks about crossover fights are also relevant here. While not directly commenting on Paul, Canelo has highlighted that elite professionals often exploit every opening from less experienced opponents. Analysts suggest that this principle applies strongly in this matchup. Davis has all the tools to punish mistakes, while Paul must combine athleticism, strategy, and discipline to avoid being overwhelmed. Former fighters suggest that Paul's ability to survive will depend on conditioning, timing, and composure, factors that may be tested more rigorously than in his previous bouts. Promoters and trainers have also weighed in, noting that Paul has improved technically under rigorous guidance, but Davis represents an entirely different class of challenge. Observers emphasize that while Paul has knockout potential against mid-level opposition, Davis's speed, precision, and elite-level punch resistance may neutralize Paul's power. Trainers argue that Jake Paul's preparation will need to be flawless, including footwork, guard discipline, and situational awareness. Any lapse could result in immediate consequences, as Davis has proven repeatedly against skilled professionals. Former champions highlight that the fight will not only be about raw talent, but also strategy. Davis has demonstrated that he can control pace, manage risk, and adjust tactics mid-fight, whereas Paul has been criticized for overcommitting or misreading situations against more experienced opposition. Analysts argue that the outcome will hinge on whether Paul can combine his athletic advantages with ring intelligence fast enough to counter Davis's experience and finishing ability. Media narratives also play a role. Jake Paul has leveraged social media, promotion, and hype to elevate the fight to a global spectacle, attracting viewers who might not traditionally follow boxing. This adds pressure, but also opportunity. Analysts note that Paul's ability to handle the spotlight could influence performance. Meanwhile, Davis approaches the fight as a professional preparing for the challenges of elite competition, and his focus on fundamentals, preparation, and precision sets him apart from fighters who are swept up by external distractions. In interviews, Davis has expressed respect for Paul's accomplishments while remaining focused on his own strengths. He highlights his speed, power, and adaptability, emphasizing that he will treat the fight like any other professional contest. Analysts note that Davis's approach contrasts with Paul's, whose persona thrives on showmanship and narrative building. Observers suggest that Davis's disciplined preparation may ultimately allow him to exploit the gaps in Paul's experience under pressure. Former fighters and analysts have consistently debated how size and reach might influence the fight. Paul has a height and reach advantage, which could allow him to maintain range and avoid early danger. However, Davis has repeatedly demonstrated the ability to close gaps quickly and unleash devastating combinations regardless of reach disadvantage. Experts argue that while Paul may attempt to control the fight with long-range punches, Davis's timing, angles, and inside power will test the limits of that strategy. The mental dimension of this fight cannot be overstated. Jake Paul thrives on attention and momentum, feeding off the energy of the crowd and media hype. Davis, however, has faced elite-level scrutiny and performs under pressure without relying on external validation. Analysts suggest that the psychological difference could be decisive. Paul must remain composed under intense pressure, while Davis has shown that his mental fortitude allows him to stay in control, even when facing opponents with height, reach, or hype advantages. Overall, the fight represents a clash of styles, skill levels, and legacies. Jake Paul brings youth, reach, athleticism, and a proven ability to improve under pressure, but he faces a fighter in Gervonta Davis who is faster, more powerful, and more experienced at the highest levels of professional boxing. Analysts agree that the fight will be exciting, competitive, and unpredictable, with both fighters capable of influencing momentum. However, the consensus among experts is that Davis's combination of speed, power, and elite boxing IQ makes him a strong favorite, while Paul's best chance lies in disciplined preparation, maintaining distance, and avoiding mistakes that could lead to a sudden knockout. Promoters, fighters, and analysts all recognize the significance of the fight. For Paul, a win would establish him as more than a social media phenomenon. For Davis, a win would reaffirm his status as one of boxing's elite. Every element, skill, strategy, psychology, hype, and legacy is in play. Fans, commentators, and former champions alike are eagerly debating what might happen when Jake Paul steps into the ring with Gervonta Davis, and the tension continues to grow as fight day approaches. The narrative is clear. This fight is not only a test of physical skill, but also of strategy, mental toughness, and ability to perform under unprecedented pressure. Analysts like Shane Mosley, Roy Jones Jr., Tim Bradley, and others have all weighed in, offering varying perspectives. Mosley emphasizes the danger Davis represents, while Jones Jr. notes that Paul's athleticism and reach could provide opportunities. Bradley and other observers highlight the matchup dynamics, particularly the role of speed, timing, and ring IQ. Each perspective underscores the unpredictability of the fight, while consistently acknowledging that Davis's proven elite abilities make him the most dangerous man Paul has ever faced. In conclusion, Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis is a bout that captures attention beyond the boxing world. It blends the worlds of celebrity, crossover appeal, and elite professional skill. Analysts agree on one thing: it will be a spectacle that tests every element of Paul's boxing growth while challenging Davis to maintain dominance against an unconventional but improving opponent. The fight promises high drama, explosive action, and an examination of how far a crossover fighter can push against one of boxing's most fearsome punchers. Ultimately, it is a story of skill, ambition, and the clash of different boxing worlds, a fight that will be talked about for years to come.